A man no longer dies on the battlefield. He dies on the sofa, trying to decipher her feelings. His life is not taken away by a bullet. It is drained, drop by drop, by her taunts, her manipulative tears, her punishing silence. In the end, he simply disappears, becomes immortal in his own home, and calls it a sacrifice. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher Ting, never asked for respect. He ruled. He did not chase storms to feel alive. He tamed the storm within himself. And he left warnings for men like you and me, not poetry, not soothing words of comfort, but warnings. You have power over your mind, not over external events, he writes. But what happens when a man today allows a woman to become the central event in his life? What happens when he gives her the power to determine his emotional state? What if the biggest battle a man actually fights isn't on the court, but in his own bedroom, for the sovereignty of his soul? This isn't another video that will give you a simple list of red flags or dating tactics. This is an exploration into the male psyche. We won't just list disrespectful behaviors. We'll explore why you, a good, smart man, might find yourself tolerating them in the first place. Over the next 25 minutes, we'll explore this complex and painful dilemma through 3 powerful and insightful lenses. First, we'll look at it through the lens of evolutionary psychology. Are you unwittingly failing ancient tests of power that you don't even know you're doing? Second, through the lens of depth psychology. Is she a mirror of a chaotic and unexamined part of your psyche that you're addicted to? And third, through the lens of social value. Are you continually investing in a relationship that is mentally and emotionally bankrupt? Before we go any further, I want you to let go of any guilt or shame. This exploration isn't about blame. It's about gaining radical clarity. Because the first step to reclaiming your power is knowing exactly how and why you gave it up. Let's start by mapping out the territory, the silent poisons that are often mistaken for passion. The erosion of a man's spirit does not happen in one catastrophic event. It happens in a series of small, seemingly forgivable injuries, day after day, until he finds himself bleeding silently, wondering how he got there.
Let's call the man who endures this the tolerant man. His story is a quiet one. It's the story of a sarcastic joke she made about him in front of friends, to which he often replied that it's just her sense of humor. It's the story of an unpredictable temper outburst that ruins an evening, to which he justifies it as she's just stressed out about work. It's the story of a contemptuous glance when he speaks passionately about his goals, to which he learns to ignore. Each incident in itself seems too small to argue about. To protest would be an overreaction. And so he does what good men are taught to do. He tolerates, he forgives, he keeps the peace. But these are not random, isolated incidents. They are data points in a larger destructive pattern. They are maps of silent poisons, and to find a way out, you must first learn to read the map. To be clear, we can group these behaviors, which should never be tolerated, into 3 main categories. First, there is the erosion of respect. This includes public ridicule, contempt for your goals and ambitions, constant criticism disguised as helpful advice, and quiet, steady indifference that makes you feel like background noise in your own life. Second, there is the control game. This includes emotional manipulation, where her mood determines the atmosphere of the entire household, sexual manipulation, where intimacy is used as a tool for reward and punishment, and constant subtle testing of your boundaries, just to see how far they can be bent before they are broken. And third, there is the value imbalance. This is entitlement without responsibility, where she expects more than she gives. It is subtle and sometimes overt competition, where your success feels like a threat to hers. It is a fundamental lack of gratitude for your efforts and sacrifices. You recognize these moments, right? You have probably explained them away to yourself and to others. She's just stressed. It's just her nature. All couples have problems. You call it compromise. You call it patience. You call it love. But what if it's none of those things? To understand the real dynamics at play, we have to look beyond the surface excuses and through our first analytical lens, the ancient unspoken game of our evolutionary past.
The question we have to ask is, were her actions simply disrespectful, or were they, on a deeper level, a primal test of your strength? What if every hurtful sarcasm is more than just a random act of disrespect? What if it's a subconscious question from her primitive brain, a question whispered over millennia? Are you still strong enough to lead? Are you still worthy of my respect? To understand this first perspective, we have to look beyond modern emotions and into the deep ancient programming of our species. Imagine modern man, that's you. You've been taught that healthy relationships are built on communication and cooperation. So when your partner creates emotional chaos or makes a snide joke about you, you respond rationally. You ask, "What's wrong?" You try to open up a rational dialogue. You try to solve the problem together as equals. From a modern perspective, your approach is correct. But from an evolutionary psychology perspective, you are failing an important test. This framework suggests that at a deep subconscious level, a woman often runs what are called fitness tests. These are not conscious, malicious games. They're instinctive, ancient behaviors designed to probe a man's strength, emotional resilience, and determination. Is he a rock or easily swayed? Can he lead with calm authority, or will he crumble in anxiety or anger in the face of a storm? Many of the behaviors we have identified are classic examples of these tests. When she mocks you in front of others, she is unconsciously testing to see if you have the self-esteem to remain unshaken or set firm boundaries. When she creates emotional chaos, she is testing whether you will be the calm center of the storm or get swept up in it with her. When she challenges your decisions, she is testing the strength of your belief in your own purpose. In this view, your pain stems from a tragic misunderstanding of the game being played. You are trying to play a modern cooperative game, while she, on a deeply primal level, is playing an ancient biological game.
And here is the brutal truth this lens reveals. Your kindness, your patience, your willingness to talk things through, all the qualities you believe make you a good man, may be interpreted as weakness by this ancient part of her brain. You think you are building a bridge of communication, but she feels you are not holding the leadership position. You show weakness, and she unconsciously sees it as a lack of strength. Every time you tolerate something that shouldn't be tolerated, you fail another test, and her respect for you slowly erodes. But this perspective, while powerful, is incomplete. It explains the dynamics of the game, the how it is played. It doesn't fully explain the why. Why are you so often drawn to someone who feels the need to constantly test you in this way? To get to that answer, we have to turn the camera away from her and inward, into the complex and often hidden world of your own psyche. The most dangerous relationships are not those that challenge us, but those that perfectly reflect our own inner turmoil. The evolutionary perspective shows us the how of the game, but it doesn't always explain the why. Why is it that you, a thoughtful, logical man, are often irresistibly drawn to someone who embodies the very instability that drains you? To get to that answer, we have to turn the camera away from her and inward. We must look through the lens of depth psychology. Imagine the unintegrated man. In his professional life, he is competent, logical, and in control. He prides himself on his reason. Yet his emotional world is a foreign country to him, a place he rarely visits. Then he meets a woman who is the opposite. She is emotionally expressive, dramatic, unpredictable, even erratic. He is not repelled by this. He is captivated. Her turbulence is not a red flag. It is life. It is depth. The great Swiss psychologist Carl Jung would have a clear explanation for this powerful attraction. He believed that our external relationships are often a mirror of our internal world. Jung said that within every man there is an anima, an inner feminine archetype that represents his connection to emotions, intuition, creativity, and relationships.
When a man is in touch with this part of himself, he is balanced and whole. But when he ignores or suppresses his emotional inner world, his anima becomes negative, a chaotic, erratic, and underdeveloped force within him. And since he cannot see it within himself, he unconsciously seeks it outside himself. This is called projection. In this view, he does not love the woman before him. He loves the projection of his own chaotic, unlived soul. Her drama is like passion because his own emotional life has been silenced. He is drawn to her storms because his own inner sea is unusually calm. He often feels a deep need to save or fix her, but this is a subconscious attempt to heal a part of himself that he has long since abandoned. Which brings us to a difficult but illuminating truth. In this view, you are not a victim of her chaos, you are an addict to it. Her behavior drains you, yes, but on some deep, unconscious level, it also makes you feel alive, because it forces you to connect with the very emotional energy you have been holding back within yourself. You are trying to find wholeness in another person. The sad thing is that this path never leads to wholeness. It only leads to depletion. The real work is not to fix her, but to go inward and begin the difficult journey of integrating your own inner world. If the evolutionary lens shows us a game and the psychological lens shows us a mirror, what does the pragmatic, practical lens of value and exchange show us? It shows us a transaction, and for many good men, it is a transaction in which they are losing badly. Every relationship is, at its core, an exchange, not of money, but of value. The currencies are time, energy, respect, peace, and emotional support. In a healthy relationship, the exchange is balanced. But what happens when you are the only one depositing money into a joint account that is constantly overdrawn? Let's look through our third and final lens, the pragmatic perspective of social exchange and value theory.
Imagine the losing investor. This is a man who pours his most valuable asset into a relationship. He invests his time, which he can never get back. He invests his emotional energy, providing support and stability. He invests his purpose, sharing his goals and vision for the future. He provides commitment and loyalty. This is his deposit. In return, he expects a fair dividend, respect, gratitude, peace, and mutual support. But instead, his withdrawals include criticism, emotional turmoil, disrespect, and a constant feeling of inadequacy. The ledger is in chaos. He is in a constant state of emotional and spiritual debt. Social exchange theory suggests that subconsciously, we all constantly run this kind of cost-benefit analysis in our relationships. We stay with people when we perceive that the rewards of the relationship outweigh the costs. Costs aren't just arguments or annoyances. They're the drain on your self-esteem, the compromise of your standards, the loss of your inner peace. The behaviors we outlined earlier aren't just emotional. They are catastrophic financial losses to your spiritual ledger.
Her ridicule is a tax on your self-confidence. Her entitlement is a withdrawal from your generosity. Her manipulation is a theft of your peace of mind. In this view, your burnout is more than a feeling. It is a symptom of spiritual bankruptcy. You have invested your most precious, non-renewable assets, your time, your attention, your self-esteem, into a project that consistently yields negative returns. Tolerating her behavior in this cold, hard view is not an act of kindness. It is to continue to fund a failing enterprise with your own blood life. It is poor emotional and spiritual economy. It is to continue to believe in a beautiful promise while ignoring dire quarterly reports. We've now seen this problem through 3 different and powerful lenses: a primal game you're failing at, an internal mirror that reflects your own chaos, and a failed transaction that's bankrupting your soul. But all 3 lenses, from all different angles, point to one uncomfortable and inevitable conclusion. A conclusion that shifts the focus away from her behavior, her psychology, or her values, and places it squarely and firmly on you. Her behavior may be toxic, but your tolerance is the spoon that spoons the poison into you day after day.
We've looked at this dynamic through 3 different lenses: a primal game, an inner mirror, a failed transaction. But they all point to an uncomfortable, unavoidable truth. A truth that shifts the focus away from her behavior, her psychology, or her values, and places it squarely and firmly on you. The real tragedy doesn't begin with her actions. It begins with what you allow. Think about it honestly. You tell yourself stories to make disrespect acceptable. You cling to the memory of who she was in the first few months, hoping that someday she'll come back. You spend your days trying not to upset her, learning to read the weather in her eyes, treading lightly in the house you helped build. You scale back your ambitions so as not to scare her away. You silence your own needs so as not to be a burden. You call it compromise. You call it patience. You call it the hard work of a committed relationship. But the stark truth is that it's fear. It's the slow suicide of your own sovereignty. Every time you forgive what should be the ultimate boundary, every time you explain away an intentional act of disrespect with soft logic, every time you bend your own non-negotiable standards to keep her in your life, you're sending a clear message. Not just to her, but to yourself. The message is, this is acceptable. I'm willing to be treated this way. My well-being is less important than your presence. You're not keeping the relationship alive, you're burying yourself alive inside it. The tragedy is not that she is a storm, it is that you have forgotten that you were meant to be a harbor, a place of strength and calm, not a small ship tossed by the waves. You have forgotten that a man should be upright, not because he is sustained by the hope of her approval, but because he stands on the foundation of his own self-respect. But once a man realizes that he has been his own jailer, that his tolerance is the lock on his own cage, how does he find the key? The answer lies not in more arguments, more explanations, or more desperate attempts to be understood. It lies in a different kind of silence, the silence of awakening. The world tells a broken man to scream, to fight, to get her back. It favors grand, dramatic gestures of confrontation. The ancient Stoics and the Emperor Marcus Aurelius himself would tell him to do something much more radical, much more powerful. Nothing.
Not the nothing of weakness or surrender, but the nothing of strategic, forceful retreat. Imagine the awakened man. This is the man who finally sees the truth of his situation, and so he stops.
He stops explaining why his feelings are justified. He stops arguing with her version of events. He stops chasing her for love after she turns him away. He stops trying to fix what was designed to break him. In a quiet, deliberate act of self-preservation, he withdrew his energy from her and directed it inward, where it had always belonged. This was the beginning of the Stoic solution, a path of rebuilding forged in insight and discipline. It began with what we might call the silence of awareness. This was not a silence filled with resentment. It was a conscious refusal to participate in the chaos. He no longer negotiated with her moods. He no longer apologized for his boundaries. He simply stopped feeding the drama with his attention and energy. His silence was not a punishment for her. It was a refuge for him. From this stillness, he practiced the second principle, becoming the cliff. Marcus Aurelius lived amid betrayal, politics, and death, but he wrote, "Be like the cliff against which the waves continue to crash. It stands firm and tames the fury of the water." The awakened man learns to embody this. He is no longer swayed by her angry waves, her guilt trips, or her manipulations. He stands firm in his principles. His actions are now guided by his own internal compass, not by his reactions to her emotional weather. This newfound stability allows him to focus on the final, most important step, returning to purpose. For months, perhaps years, his primary purpose has been managing the relationship. Now, all that reclaimed energy is reinvested in his true mission, his work, his mind, his body. He reads more than he scrolls. He builds more than he complains. He retreated into solitude, not to sulk, but to forge himself into the man he had always wanted to be. This was the beginning of his rebirth. This was the path to true rebuilding. When you stop reacting to her reality, you begin to create your own. Her chaos can no longer find a place in your mind because your mind is now occupied with your purpose. Your peace becomes your shield, and your purpose becomes your sword. And as this man rebuilt, something remarkable happened. He was no longer the tolerant, wounded man she had known. He had become someone else entirely. He had become sovereign. The man who has rebuilt himself from the rubble does not trade his new empire to sit in the audience of others. He has seen what lies at the bottom and does not want to go back. He is transformed. Let us call this final state the sovereign man. He is the one who has completed the journey. When he enters a room, his presence carries weight, not because he is loud, but because he is still. He is calm, deliberate, and his energy is entirely his own. He is not cold, but he is unshakable. He is not cruel, but his peace is non-negotiable. His boundaries are no longer lines in the sand, easily washed away by the next tide of emotion. They are now mountains, silent and immovable.
This is the state of inviolability that the Stoics spoke of. It's not an aggressive posture, it's a deep state of interconnection. His power comes not from the need to dominate others, but from the fact that he no longer succumbs to lies or manipulation. He has learned that love without respect is like a gilded cage, and he would rather be free than a king in a prison of someone else's design. He guards his mind like a warrior, and his inner fortress is no longer open to invaders. And something fascinating happens when a man reaches this state of sovereignty. The world begins to respond to him differently. If a woman walks into his life right now, a woman of character and integrity, she will feel the difference immediately. She will not feel the frantic need of a man demanding her validation in order to feel complete. She won't feel the secrecy that invites games and manipulation. Instead, she will feel the quiet, enormous gravity of his self-respect. She will see the clarity in his eyes. She will feel the solidity of his boundaries, not as walls meant to keep her out, but as the foundation of a kingdom he has built for himself. And she will know without a word being spoken that this is not a man to be trifled with. This is a man you respect or you walk away from, because he has finally learned to respect himself completely. He doesn't need her to complete him. He is already complete. He invites her to join him in his empire, not to save him from his ruin. This journey from ruin to sovereignty is more than a philosophical tale. It is a choice for every man listening right now. It is the choice to finally become the emperor of your own soul. A man who remembers who he is becomes untouchable, not because he dominates others, but because he no longer succumbs to the lies people tell him. He has walked through the fire of emotional manipulation and is not burned but tempered. He now understands that a good man is not a weak man. A good man is someone who has the clarity to see what is destructive and the courage to choose discipline over desire, peace over efficiency. The world may not applaud you for this choice. They may call you cold, difficult, or aloof. But the world does not have to live with the silent rot of self-betrayal. You do. Or rather, you did. Not anymore. The throne of your mind was never hers to take. Only you can abdicate. It is time to take it back. This path of self-healing is the highest work a man can do. It is the journey from being a subject in someone else's emotional kingdom to becoming an emperor of his own. If this message has awakened something within you, I invite you to subscribe and join the community of men who are choosing to build, not bend. Share this video with another man who needs to be reminded of the emperor who sleeps within. I leave you with this final charge. In the comments below, share a small step, a decision that you will make this week to reclaim your sovereignty. It doesn't have to be a grand gesture. It can be as simple as not responding to a manipulative text or taking an hour of silence, rebuilding your own inner world. Let's walk this path together. Remember Marcus Aurelius. Remember your worth. The work begins now.